Hi everyone, welcome to today's session of UPSC Buffet by Gallant IAS. So today we'll be discussing the 2022 Geography PYQs. So last day we discussed 2021. So just like always, we'll be going through the series of PYQs and let's start our discussion. Slight difference is there. First of all, I'll give you an overall insight about the geography part of this paper. In 2022, the kind of questions mostly asked from geography were a little bit from concepts and more from the mapping areas. But later in 2023, 24 and including 25, the questions turned out to be more conceptual. This is kind of a trend that UPSC used to have before. And later the number of questions from geography theory part reduced and more into the mapping side of things has been asked. But there is a clear-cut repetitive theme when it comes to geography, because there are few areas where the themes are being very clearly repeated. I'll tell you that right away so that you can just have an idea. That is insolation or solar budget, heat budget. That's a very repeated theme. Again, summer solstice, the solstices and equinox. These are the major areas that has been repeatedly asked. So insolation, the question kind of changed every year, but the basic idea remains the same. It's directly related to the heat budget and how heat is being absorbed and re-emitted and used for warming the earth, or all the adverse effects arising out of it. So that's the basic thing. These are the two things that are being frequently asked. So just make these concepts very thorough. Going through the PYQ is more than enough actually. You'll get the idea about insolation and solstices right away. In this session itself, I'll be explaining a lot of things. So this will be enough for this particular topic. So let's begin. The first question is, high clouds primarily reflect solar radiation and cool the surface of the earth. Okay. Low clouds have high absorption of infrared radiation emanating from earth's surface, thus cause warming effect. Few things, right off the bat, you need to know few things, or from the question itself, you could, you can actually deduct few things. That is, there are two kinds of clouds, high clouds and low clouds. So you might have actually studied about these high clouds and low clouds, like low clouds like nimbus, cumulonimbus, things like that, and high clouds like stratus, cirrostratus, things like that. But you might have missed out on how they interact with the sunlight, with the insolation, incoming solar radiation, and affect the heating of the earth's surface. Okay, so that's the one connection you might have missed. People might have learned everything about clouds, the technical, the naming, everything about it, but the functional aspect of things would have been missed. That's the very important thing, because UPSC mostly relies on checking your functional knowledge rather than your factual knowledge, because you need to be knowing about clouds in a way that you need to know how they function rather than what they are. You need to know what they are, that is there, but rather than the details of what they are, you need to know how they function, how they interact. So that's the basic thing. Functionality is very important when it comes to geography. If you study any phenomena, whether it be clouds, currents, waves, tides, or anything, weathering, functional aspect of things are very important. What do they do? What impact do they have on their surface, on the landscape formation, or the heating, or anything? So pay close attention to the functional aspect of things more than learning the facts. So learn the functional aspect of things, note down the facts, repeatedly learn it, because number of clouds are when you classify clouds high, low, there are numerous clouds, numerous combinations, cirrostratus, cumulostratus, things like that are there. So it gets quite fact heavy, but just write down those notes and then keep it aside. Then study the functional aspect and revise those factual knowledge closer to the examination. That's the perfect strategy to approach any question, particularly in geography. So first of all we'll go through the question. High clouds. Okay, the question is about high clouds and how they are actually okay. So the function they're asking about, what does the high clouds do basically? So high clouds primarily reflect solar radiation and cool the surface of earth. Okay, low clouds have high absorption of infrared radiation emanating from the surface, thus cause warming effect. The second side of things makes perfect sense. High absorption of infrared radiation emanating from Earth's surface, this causes a warming effect. Okay, this makes sense. This part makes sense, but we are not really sure whether the high cloud or the low cloud is the one responsible for this. Then high clouds primarily reflect solar radiation, cool the surface of Earth. Again, reflecting solar radiation, that means albedo, can have a cooling effect. So these parts are right. Basically, these are right. But we are not really sure whether it's the high clouds that actually does this, or is it the low clouds. Meaning, are these statements interchanged? The statement about high cloud is actually the statement about low cloud, meaning that is being interchanged. That is a very common type of question UPSC asks, especially when you don't have any factual knowledge. Sometimes these kind of knowledge really helps. That is the kind of questions UPSC, the pattern, how they have been set, really helps you understand those things. Switching those options, as in just switching the keyword, is a very common strategy that UPSC uses, especially in these two statement questions. So we need to think about it. Okay, high clouds primarily reflect solar radiation. Okay, if you really think about it, high clouds are, if you know something about them, you know that they are very thin, meaning that they don't really reflect solar radiation. They allow the solar radiation to pass. That's their issue. Okay, or we cannot say that's their issue. That's what they do. So high clouds are thin in nature and they are not very dense. So they let the solar radiation actually pass through them. That's one thing you need to know. Even without a factual knowledge, you can actually imagine high clouds being, if you heard about something like cirrostratus, because they are feather-like structure, they are very porous. So they are not really good reflectors of solar radiation. So that's one thing. Assuming with that knowledge, you can actually eliminate this thing, because high clouds very less chance of doing that. It should probably be a dense cloud that is in the lower stratus or the low clouds. So this is wrong. Then low clouds have high absorption of infrared radiation emanating from the Earth's surface. Again, plausible scenario, we can imagine that low clouds are very close to the Earth's surface. They have a good tendency to absorb infrared radiation. But in reality, the thing is that they don't really actually absorb the infrared radiation. They actually let the infrared radiation pass through them. And it's the high clouds that are actually good at absorbing the infrared radiation because of their cool nature and thus trapping the heat. It's completely switched. Okay, you could eliminate this based on logic, but this requires fact. So high clouds and low clouds, you need to know what they do. So it's basically interchanged, and the answer is D. If you're still confused, it's a very easy topic. I've made a table so that you can easily understand. Only these 4 columns and 2 rows, and you're done. So that's basically the cloud type. It's a low cloud. Imagine low cloud as something that is good. Okay, then it becomes very easy. Good as in terms of global warming. So in a global warming perspective, a good cloud should be having high albedo and low absorption. So basically, that's exactly what this low clouds does. So they are having a net cooling effect. So low clouds are a good cloud in a global warming scenario, meaning they have good albedo, high albedo, and low absorption. Basic. And high clouds are just the opposite. They have poor albedo, meaning they let the sunlight pass, and they trap the long wave radiation, meaning they are net warming in effect. So low clouds are the good ones in a global warming scenario. High clouds are the not so good ones. So that's it. It's very easy. Don't overcomplicate it. This very knowledge can really help you answer a lot of questions, especially in 2023 and 24. Similar question has been asked, and all you need was this knowledge. Okay, that the low cloud is something that is good, and it's the long wave radiation that causes the global warming. Those two things. And I think you are all aware that sunlight emits, when the rays from the sunlight, it's basically ultraviolet. That is short wave. Short wave is in high frequency radiation. And this high frequency radiation is absorbed by the Earth, and Earth acts like a black body, and it once it absorbs the heat and later it releases, just like any other body. If you heat a pan, it absorbs the heat first, then it radiates the heat. So just like that, the Earth radiates the heat. Any black body, including Earth, if it radiates heat, it will be long wave radiation. Long wave as in long wavelength and short frequencies. Okay, meaning that the waves will be having longer wavelength. From one wave to another wave, the distance between their crest and trough will be longer. But on the other hand, the ultraviolet is short wave. So short waves are directly from the Earth, and those heat energy absorbed by the Earth as a black body releases it later to become the long wave radiation. That is the infrared radiation. So infrared is long wave, ultraviolet is short wave. So that's the basic idea you need, and in the coming days you will see that same exact knowledge or the basic understanding of this helps you really good understanding about solving the questions. And similar thing has been asked in the subsequent all years, I think 23, 24, 25, and I can expect something similar in 2026 as well, and 2027 even. So that's a very rewarding, just a very conceptual understanding is needed and you're good to go. Moving on, next one, monocyte. If you are from Kerala, you will be knowing something about monocyte because it is frequently in news back then, and if you are aware from the southern part of Kerala, you will be knowing much more about it. You might have seen Indian Rare Earth Minerals Limited, those constructions when you are passing by the southern side of the state in the national highway. You might have seen that. So monocyte, even if you are not from Kerala, it's fine. We can actually deduce this question. It's very easily framed. So monocyte is a source of rare earth. By the name itself, it sounds like something of a rare earth or a complex mineral or something that is not generally available or sort, because from the name itself it sounds like that, having an Z and ITE. That's basic logic, but of course you need to know monocyte. But even if you don't know, because there are like more than 150 elements there, so you won't be knowing, and there are other minerals as well, so you won't be knowing everything. But deciphering from the name, you can think that okay, this is something, a complex mineral like titanium, something like that. So monocyte is not actually a mineral. I think it's just a deposit. So it's source of rare earth. Okay, somewhat it makes sense. Okay, monocyte contains thorium. This is proper fact, and we all know that the coastal tracts of Kerala and some parts of Odisha has monocyte in their coastal tracts. So they contain thorium. That's their benefit. And thorium is a radioactive material and it's a fissile material, and it's a very good substitute for uranium. But the issue is that current technology of nuclear energy is not entirely compatible for thorium. So that's why we are using a we are planning a 3-stage nuclear program, and only the 2 stages are being completed so far. We'll get back to that later. We have a question on that in 2024, I guess. So we'll be discussing that on that topic. I'll be explaining everything in detail. Right now, just understand that monocyte contains thorium. Okay, makes sense. It's a factual knowledge, and those who might have heard about this illegal sand mining or coastal inundation, storm surges, especially in the southern states, and they are especially attributed to the mining activities conducted by the Indian Rare Earth Minerals, which is a public sector enterprise under Ministry of Atomic Energy. So monocyte makes sense. Monocyte occurs naturally in entire Indian coastal sands in India. This is an extreme statement, obviously, and you need to know, if it occurs entirely in Indian coastal sands, then why are IRE set up in only few tracts? And it's not really possible because neither of our coast has got any uniform structure. The southern coast is very different from the northern coast, or to be more clear, the west and east coast are entirely different. One is one is a submergent and one is an emergent coast. So a lot of variation is there between them, and there is physical variations and all sort of this attributes to mineral variations also. So this is a very unlikely scenario. So we can eliminate 3 and easily arrive at the answer. That's how the question has been framed. But this is the fact also. Just take this fact. Government bodies only can process or export monocyte. Some people think that this is the extreme statement and they eliminate 4. But in reality, that is true, because monocyte falls under Ministry of Atomic Energy, and atomic energy is a critical sector where government has an upper hand and very little private participation. I think little to no private participation is there in that sector. So this is true. So there are 2 extreme statements, but you should be having an idea on which one to choose based on some level of understanding. I am choosing this to be wrong because I know that the entire coast of the India is not uniform. It has got as much diversity as possible. So it's not really possible to have the entire coastal sands to have same mineral composition. That's the idea behind that. So moving on, we eliminate that and we arrive at the answer. So that's it. Moving on, next question. I'll have actually added few things, because since rare earth have been asked, and critical minerals is something that is always been in news, especially since China's ban on export of cobalt and I think lithium. So critical minerals are always in the list or always in the news, and you need to know few entries in those lists, because in the past UPSC has asked, in 2020 also UPSC has asked which are major and minor minerals. So they could also ask something about which among the following are part of critical mineral list. So critical mineral are something, certain minerals that are designated as critical because of their importance in manufacturing process, especially in electronics manufacturing, EVs, and other high-end technology manufacturing. But at the same time, only few countries have the access or have the reserves, and few countries dominate the supply chains. So they are very vulnerable to supply chain disruptions. That is why they are called critical minerals. So those minerals which are very essential for high-end technology manufacturing, everything having high industrial value, but is limited in supply, and the supply chain is being dominated by few players, especially China and USA. So that is why it is a critical mineral, and it has got 30 minerals. It has got lithium, cobalt, as we all know. These are used in our lithium ion batteries. Nickel, obviously, in electronics and battery manufacturing itself. Graphite is a very potential, potential material for the next generation energy storage devices like supercapacitors, things like that. Then there is a set of rare earth elements. These are neodymium, dysprosium, and lanthanides. These all fall under rare earth elements, and these set of rare earth elements fall under the critical minerals. So just understand that not all critical minerals are rare earth, but almost all the rare earths are critical minerals. Then beryllium, titanium. From just having a look at it, just look for these copper, chromium, etc. Because copper is something you might not think that it's very in a critical mineral list. You might not think like that, but copper is definitely in that list. Other than that, anything with a very technical name like neodymium, dysprosium, you might have heard about neodymium magnet, things like that comes, it's most likely in the critical mineral list. That's why it's not possible to learn the entire list 30 and without making a mistake, but just get an idea about that and look for something that doesn't fit the bill. For me, that's copper. Copper in critical mineral list is something that I actually didn't expect, because for me, copper I thought was a mineral that is having a reasonably high level of supply, but it's not that. So that's one thing I noted. Take note of these conditions and then learn. Otherwise, you will be just learning things and you might be forgetting it easily. So just knowing that critical minerals doesn't have copper itself can actually give you the right answer. So that's how you should be studying these fact heavy lists and everything. Okay, moving on. Next, UPSC's favorite, the summer solstice. This particular question I think has been asked multiple times in the last 10 years. I think 5 to 6 times, different format. First, either it will be asking about its impact on northern hemisphere, Tropic of Cancer, or the Arctic Circle, or the longest day. Anything could be asked. But the idea is very simple. All you need to know is 4 dates, and that's it. In northern hemisphere, longest day of the year normally occurs in. Okay, we need to figure out what exactly are they talking about. Whether it's equinox or summer solstice or winter solstice. If you know that summer solstice is when the sun is at or above the Tropic of Cancer latitude, because the position of sun changes latitudinally, and it starts from the equator, then it moves towards the northern hemisphere, and up until the Tropic of Cancer, then it moves south towards the Tropic of Capricorn, and then it moves back again to the equator. This is how it moves. It's not that sun that is moving, because of the Earth's tilt, the relative position of the sun is changing. That's about it. So when the sun is actually above the above the Tropic of Cancer, that is in the northern hemisphere, there will be longest day, because sun is there for longer hours compared to the southern hemisphere. I think that's basic common sense. If sun is there for longer hours, meaning that it will be having longer days. So all you need to figure out is which among the following date is summer solstice. Okay, so if you know the date, that's something I struggled to learn, but somehow I just made a mnemonic for myself and to remember that clearly. So I know that it's in June and June and December. June for summer solstice, December for winter solstice, and then I think March and September. I have to cross check with that. March and September for equinox, December and June for summer and winter solstice. And their dates are more or less between 20 to 23. So that's not very clear. Many sources say different things. But just imagine it's 20 to 21. And they have asked only first half or second half, because we cannot pinpoint that thing. So that's exactly why they have asked this. So it's obviously in the second half of June, which is a factual knowledge you need to have. There is no other way around it, because this is very hard to decipher, because June and July are very close. There is no particular events happening other than monsoon, which is again a local phenomenon. So it's asking about the entire northern hemisphere. So nothing logical can be done here. The only logic is that you need to understand that they are asking about summer solstice, because during summer solstice, longest day of the year happens in the northern hemisphere. So it's second half of month of June. I think between 21 and 22 June. Just look at this image and learn it. End of story. Nothing more is needed. And use your logic. As in, question will be asked about when sun doesn't set beyond horizon in the Arctic Circle. You can actually know which solstice or equinox are they talking about. So that's it. All you need is to connect that and learn these dates. December, June. Of solstices are in December and June and December. June for summer solstice and December for winter. Then the equinox. Equinox, I think you know that equinox is when the sun is actually above the equator. So uniform date. The length of the day is uniform across both hemispheres. So there is no variations of day and night. They will be having equal day and nights. Then there is two equinox. One when the sun crosses to the equator towards the north, and one it crosses towards the south. So that's why we have two equinox, vernal and autumnal, and it's between September and March. You don't need to figure out this 20 or 21, 22, 23. This is slightly complicated. Different sources say different dates. Just imagine it's between 20, 21, 22, something like that. Between 20 and 23, that's it. Almost all the dates are like between 20 and 23. So that's about it. Another favorite area of UPSC covered. Two core areas covered in this session itself. If you could understand it or if you couldn't understand, I recommend you just go through the portion again, just what I said, and that's all is needed. Okay, nothing more is needed about this. You don't need to be knowing anything more, and don't overcomplicate it. Don't go behind the date. Just assume the date to be 20 to 23 and you'll be fine. Questions won't be that specific. Look at this. It's not specific either. Moving on. Again, a very factual question. And this is one question I honestly admit you, I just got lucky. Because most of the only few knowledge I had. First of all, Gandikota Canyon of South India was created by which of the following rivers? Right off the bat, I think I missed it entirely. This is a very famous landmark and it is called Great Canyon of India, like Grand Canyon of India, the Colorado Grand Canyon, that is very famous, and it's like a similar thing for India, but I didn't know about it. But the only thing I could decipher from it is what Gandikota, from the name itself, it's not a Tamil name, could be a Kannada name, but more likely a Telugu name. So I pinpointed towards rivers that are passing through Andhra Pradesh or Telangana. So that was my point. So I could eliminate Kaveri. Then Manjira, I wasn't sure whether or not it passes through Telangana or Andhra Pradesh, because that's not a river that we usually come across. It's a tributary of Godavari, but we don't usually come across that. But Pennar also. Okay, Pennar. Again, I thought it sounds like it's a very Malayalam sort of name with R and all. Malayalam or Tamil name. So I was a bit skeptical of that. Then Tungabhadra, I knew it doesn't flow through, majority of the Tungabhadra is towards the Karnataka side of things. So if this doesn't sound like a Kannada name either. So I eliminated these two, and Pennar, I was stuck between Manjira and Pennar, and then I just took a chance. I just blindly went with the Pennar. Okay, and I just got lucky. That is what I am saying. In a 50-50 scenario, if you do a lot of questions and you end up in something and you are stuck with it, even if you don't know a few things, and if you are able to eliminate two and arrive at one, sometimes luck will favor you. In 10 questions, if the luck favors you more than 5 times, that's worth it, worth taking the risk. The net marks you will be getting is more than what you actually would have done otherwise not attempting the question. So that is kind of risk I say. See, there is a good chance that I would have gone to Manjira, but for some reason I thought Pennar would be right. Since I could eliminate these two, and I have arrived at these two, and my number of attempts were low, I had to choose one, and I choose this. These sort of risks are actually worth taking if your attempts are not up to the expected levels. As in, if you are planning on 90 and you are still stuck at 85, and you are having 5 50-50 questions, just take a guess and just attempt it. But only if you are having a 50-50 situation, not anything else. Okay, don't go for a blind guess in any question and just assume that luck will favor you. No, it won't. We just have to be doing it statistically and on a probability basis. So that's how it's done. And this is a very famous landscape, and I think you should be knowing few things about that, and especially these rivers. That's the takeaway. You should be knowing few things about Kaveri, Manjira, Pennar, Tungabhadra, because these could be asked in a different question, in a different way, altogether a different way. Sometimes a feature on Tungabhadra could be asked. Sometimes a feature of Manjira could be asked, or sometimes origin of Manjira could be asked. Things like that. Yesterday also I told you, like, we could classify rivers based on few criteria: origin, states, and major features. And you know that most rivers flows to the Bay of Bengal, and just exceptions are there for those rivers only. Those rivers which flows into the Arabian Sea, not that, and assume everything else to be in Bay of Bengal. So that's it. I think, yeah, that's it. This is the Gandakota Canyon. It's very beautiful. It looks very much like the Grand Canyon in Colorado, USA. This was slight surprise because this is something that, I don't know, I couldn't find it in books after the exam even. I thought I missed it, but I couldn't find it. You usually study the latitudinal divisions of Himalayas, as in the Shivalik, Himachal, and the Himadri. That's the latitudinal division as the latitude goes up. We don't usually study the longitudinal divisions, and this is exactly what they are asking. As in, there is actually a longitudinal division based on the longitude, as in perpendicular direction from east to west. The Himalayas are classified. So that is mainly based on the river basins in between. So that's the criteria for that, based on the river basins between Indus to Satluj, then Satluj to Kali. So the regions between that, the Himalayan region between that, is called Punjab Himalayas, and the other way, likewise it's named like that. So that's exactly that they're asking. But luckily, one thing I could eliminate in this question, because I knew that Nokrak is a biosphere reserve, and that is in Meghalaya, and Sikkim is very far from Meghalaya, and they don't, the latitudinal line doesn't really hold up to the Sikkim Himalaya. So I could eliminate that. That's the only thing I could eliminate and arrive at a 50-50. And there I was left, 2 was right. Okay, Nanda Devi was okay. Namcha Barwa, Gadwal Himalaya. From the name of it, Namcha Barwa, of course we know that Namcha Barwa is in the eastern part of Himalayas, and Gadwal Himalaya is in the central or the western side of things. Gadwal is part of Uttarakhand, Himachal Pradesh, those area. Kumaon also same part. So Nanda Devi is in that region. Namcha Barwa is further east. So this could be wrong. Gadwal, from the name itself, we know that it's a Himachal or Uttarakhand based area. So it could be something else. As in Namcha Barwa doesn't make sense. It's further on the eastern side of Himalayas. So I eliminated that and I arrived at the answer as B. So moving on, I'll tell you a few things, because even I struggled to find the longitudinal division, and I compiled a note by myself. So I'll share that with you right now. So this is basically it. Don't stress over it much. Try to find the patterns. Just like I said, Gadwal means something. Gadwal is a region encompassing the areas of Himachal and Uttarakhand. Just have an idea about that. Then Nokrak is a biosphere reserve in Meghalaya. So Nokrak has got some presence, or it is located in that side. Then Sikkim, Nanda Devi is in Sikkim. Things like that are there. So Nanda Devi is actually in Gadwal Himalaya. Okay. Then Gadwal and Kumaon are actually overlapping areas. They are in Uttarakhand region. Then Punjab. See the extent between the rivers. That's the key thing. It's Indus and Satluj, then Satluj and Kali, then Kali and Teesta, then Teesta and Great Rangit, and Teesta and Brahmaputra. This is the basic division. So Indus Satluj, Satluj Kali, Kali Teesta, and likewise. And major areas. You'll be knowing this. See, it's in the Namcha Barwa is in Assam Himalayas, and our Nanda Devi is in Gadwal. That is right. So Nokrak, I think Nokrak is in Assam or Eastern Himalayas, or maybe it's in Assam Himalayas only. Yeah, that's it. So that's about it. Just learn this, and that's about this topic. There is nothing more to that. The term Levant, often heard in news, roughly corresponds to which of the following? This is something you won't actually come across. These are the kind of questions some people can actually answer, because for some matter they might have come across. I belong to that category. I knew about this particular statement or particular word because I happened to come across in a test series. So I knew it basically where that was, and nothing more about was not known to me. I knew the term and I knew where exactly it was. So that's something I got from a test series. But later I found out that this exact question has been asked previous year also. I think in 2011 or something, Levant was asked. If I'm not wrong, Levant was asked. So it's a basic repetition of that question. So if you come across these questions and somebody points out to you about any source, don't go behind that, because this is slightly random. Because of course people say Middle East, the regions of Israel, Palestine, that is always in news and things like that. But this is not a very relevant jargon in the current day and age. This is an outdated jargon which is not commonly used right now. So it is just an outlier question. If you can't answer it or figure it out from the word itself, some words are easy to figure out whether it's Middle Eastern in origin or European in origin or African in origin. This is slightly tricky on that side as well. So it's okay to leave these questions and don't go behind these questions unless they are connected to the current affair in a very close manner. This is not connected to the current affair. The Israel-Palestine issues has always been going. Then the Middle East issue, as always, it was there. And this is an area in the Mediterranean region. So that is there, but it's a long shot. It's not a direct connection and you cannot go out deep onto that. So if anything comes up, any region, for example, in the Israel-Palestine conflict, Khan Yunis or Rafah crossing borders, which all countries, things like that, those are relevant. Other than that, don't go beyond that. Okay, that's it. That's all is needed. And Levant, strictly factual. Luckily I got to know about that. It's a Eastern Mediterranean shores, parts of Syria, then Israel. And I think parts of Turkey is also there. Then the Lebanon and other areas. So that's the Levant region. If I am able to, if they have asked something like more tricky, whether it's Eastern or Western or Central Mediterranean, even I wouldn't have able to answer. I would have been forced to leave this question because I didn't know nothing much. Just know that it's in the Mediterranean region, the Israel-Palestine region. That's it. It's a historical, I just made an explanation. It's a historical and geographical term, okay? Eastern Mediterranean coast, and it's not a strict political boundary. It's a cultural term, just like South Asia, Southeast Asia. It's a cultural term. There is no strict boundary where South Asia ends and Southeast Asia begins and things like that. So it's just like that. It's a cultural historical term. I don't think it's very relevant also, but it's okay. Now you know. If the question is being asked, you know. And these are the regions of Levant. And please be reminded that it's not a hardcore boundaries just like these. These are the major regions, and there is no, questions won't be asked in much depth. The Levant region encompasses which all countries. Such questions won't be asked. A general question will be asked. So that's all you need to know. These are the regions. This includes Cyprus also. Okay, moving on. Which of the countries? Of course, back then Afghanistan issue was at its peak, and the US military and Taliban takeover was in news. So obviously we could expect an Afghanistan border question. Similarly, in 23, Ukraine was asked. In 24, I guess similar question was asked on another country. I think DRC or something. So the country that is mostly in news and is war prone or is engaged in a long-standing conflict, question will be asked, especially if anything new happens. Okay, so Afghanistan was in news, so obviously Afghanistan will be asked. Slightly tricky actually, if you ask me. I like actually mapping the areas, but for me the Central Asia is slightly on the trickier side. Most of them are landlocked. That's the major issue, and some of them are double landlocked. Like Uzbekistan is a double landlocked, so that is another issue. But luckily, we got one thing. Azerbaijan is across the Black Sea, and Afghanistan doesn't have any, connect with the Black Sea. So that's the only thing I knew, that Azerbaijan wouldn't be there, because Azerbaijan shares a border with the Caspian Sea, and it's across the Caspian Sea. So there is a very little chance that they are connected. So I could easily eliminate that and arrive at the answer. That's all was required, luckily. But now questions are changed. Only one, only two might be asked. So you need to be knowing the exact boundaries and borders. So mnemonics are the way to go. It's very difficult to map and remember everything. But if you could do it. But make a list of countries and make a list of seas and make a mnemonic. Anything that shouldn't necessarily make a sense outside your head. It's just have to make a sense inside your head and learn it like that. And revise it closer to the examination and be done with it. Nothing more is needed, and you wouldn't be needing any of this knowledge in mains, so no issues with that. But questions like this will be asked, at least 2 or 3 could be expected, so it's an exercise worth doing, so please do that. List down the major seas and borders, and then make a mnemonic, or go through, just Google for an existing mnemonic and get it and do it. Okay, learn it. That's it. Even if you make it wrong in the test, in the early the series, it's fine. Just make it right by the end of your prelims preparation, and closer to the prelims you should be very thorough with all the mnemonics. This is Afghanistan, and one interesting fact I would like to say is Afghanistan is connected to China through Wakhan corridor, and that's slightly interesting because POK shares a border with Afghanistan, so meaning that technically India also shares a border with Afghanistan. But that's since it's a controversial topic, and there have been a lot of debate and discussion in an international sphere, so that's why they might not have asked India. But if India is in the option, just go ahead and mark it, because POK belongs to India. So that's it, and that's it. This is Wakhan corridor that connects Afghanistan and Xinjiang. Which of the following statements best reflects the issue with Senkaku Islands? This was slightly on the easier side, because South China Sea issue, again, back then South China Sea was the hot topic. South China Sea, Afghanistan. The news have shifted to Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Palestine, Iran. Back then that was the hot topics. So Senkaku Island, it was very frequently in news, so it's hard to miss back then. So it is from the name of it, you can easily decipher that it's an Asian name, and it could be a Japanese name. If you could actually read between the lines, it sounds very much like a Japanese name rather than any other Southeast Asian. If you have listened to any Thai movies, Indonesian movies, or any other movies, or you could see that the names are not like this. Any Asian country to have a name like this would be Japan. Korea have a slightly different kind of naming, so this could most likely be a Japanese territory, or Japanese involvement should be there. So it's generally believed that they are the artificial islands made by a country around South China Sea. China and Japan engage in maritime disputes. Okay, I actually did the answer based on factual knowledge only, because I knew about it. But even if I didn't know, I would have gone for the Senkaku and tried to decipher it, whether this belongs to China or Japan or something like that. Permanent American base has been set up to help Taiwan to increase its defense capability. To international cause of justice, declared them as no man's land. Some East Asian companies claim them. We don't know. This is the most likely thing. So B is the answer. And again, this South China Sea issue is something that has taken a back seat, but the issue is not at all resolved, and it's ever growing. India has taken multiple efforts like Quad to counter those issues. So it's always in news, and there is a good chance that questions can be asked in a more factual way. Meaning, an island could be given, or a disputed territory could be given, and the countries that are involved in it could be asked strictly in a factual fashion. So try to make some effort, put in some effort into learning this chart. I know it's not all that easy, but few things, if you read it back to back, I think every day if you read the international news page, you will be coming across this Scarborough Shoal, Paracel Islands and Spratly. That's very much in the news. Every time there will be having any fisherman issue, Philippines fishermen apprehended by the Chinese Navy. In Paracel Islands also similar things happening. So that's very much in news. So learn about these islands, where they are. Not preferably if you could map it, all the more good. But understand the major countries that are having a dispute. It's China and Philippines, Scarborough Shoal. Okay, sounds like a proper Western or American name, and Philippines has got American heritage on that matter. So China and Philippines is there. Then Natuna Islands, China versus Indonesia. 9-line claim. Like China claims the entire Southeast Asian region based on a 9-line they have drawn on the map. So they lay claim to the entire Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is South China Sea. So that is rejected by the UN Closed Tribunal itself. But of course, they have their own tactics, and they exercise their power. They push militarily, and they keep the other nations at their bay, showing or flexing their muscles. So that's what countries with too much power does. Too much power and too little morality. Then Anatolia, this the basic thing. Anatolia, I think you might have heard about this. Anatolia is a region in Turkey that's there. Amhara, Romeo, Amhara, Tigray, Romeo, these are all regions in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is having a multifaceted crisis situation where one region is fighting other, and within the region itself there are a lot of issues happening. Similar in Sudan, similar in DRC. So those areas are like very complicated when it comes to civil wars, because the kind of diversity they have within them is very high. Usually in a civil war situation there will be only two players. Here actually there are multiple players, and these multiple players shift allegiance back and forth, and it's a whole mess to be honest. The Cabo Delgado, I actually didn't know this, but I know that Catalonia is in Spain, so there is a good chance that it is being interchanged or something, but it is actually not interchanged. Cabo Delgado is actually in Mozambique. Okay, but I took the assumption that Catalonia is in Spain. We all know that Barcelona, Catalonia, Catalan issue. We know that. So I thought it was interchanged, and so I thought these two will be the right answer, and I chose only two. But this Cabo Delgado was asked in the previous year. Insurgency in Cabo Delgado, that is in Mozambique. So the few takeaways I recommend, and I have compiled a note for you to make things little easier. That Sudan is very much in news. With the Sudan Darfur crisis is happening, it's very much in news, and regions in Sudan are not always, very much in news. The places are sometimes missed because the reportings are mostly around Darfur region. Other areas are there. Abyei, it's a very much important area because it's an oil-rich region, and most of the fight is happening for the capture of that region. But not much mentioning of Abyei region is there. Blue Nile region is there. Khartoum, of course, we know, capital of Sudan. Also, Janjaweed. Okay, Janjaweed is associated with which civil war? Such a question could be asked. Okay, it's a local militia, and they are the ones comprising of the Rapid Support Force, the paramilitary force that's fighting the military of Sudan. And if you get time, and if you are interested in that matter, go through. YouTube has got a brilliant spread of documentaries explaining the Sudan conflict, which actually helps you internalize what's exactly happening there, why are they fighting, and what's causing their fight, etc. And there is a clear-cut involvement of external actors from the Middle East, from the West, etc. Because these regions are very powerful, as in very rich in minerals and natural resources. Sad state of affairs, to be honest. Ethiopia is again another nation which is having its own major conflicts, and the diversity is like next level. There is Tigray region, Amhara, Oromia, and these regions are occupied by the respective ethnic groups. Tigray region occupied by Tigrays, Amharas, Oromios, then Somali region. I don't even know how to pronounce this. Afar region. Afar is in Ethiopia. Okay, that's important. Afar is in Ethiopia. Darfur is in Sudan. Don't confuse it. Then Gambela. Just have an idea about this. Don't go into the details. I wouldn't recommend. If you are interested, just listen to some documentaries. That's it. It helps you, write good answers in essay or in ethics. Also, you could bring in some case studies, etc. Other than that, they are not directly relevant in prelims. The details, but the few details are relevant. Rapid Support Force, Janjaweeds, these places, they are relevant. And what exactly is happening is also relevant. In Ethiopia, there is civil war happening. But in Sudan, the case is different. The paramilitary is having a conflict with the military. So that's an altogether different situation. It's not dictatorship happening. It's a whole different sort of problem. Because some question has been asked in the past: which among the following country suffers from frequent famine and malnutrition, or something of that sort? Answer was Somalia. So similar question will be asked, as in which country has got an issue or conflict going between its military and the paramilitary force. So that's possible. So learn about this. DRC is very relevant. This North Kivu, Ituri, these all are being asked already. UPSC has already asked about Kivu and Ituri. Tanganyika, it's a potential candidate for next year or coming years. So these are the basic things. DRC is again in a sad state of affairs because they hold the largest reserve of cobalt, and cobalt is like a critical mineral. And the surprising fact is that the adjoining Rwanda is the largest exporter of this cobalt. I don't know how that works. it's basically Rwanda using its own, proxy militias. They are actually taking away the resources from DRC, citing their long-standing racial or ethnic divisions between Hutus and Tutsis. So just read about that. Okay, Tutsi genocide, things like that. Rwandan genocide. Just go through that if you have time. So that's the basic thing. Then North Kivu, South Kivu, Ituri. These are the basic regions. I don't need to explain all this. Just learn about these places and where they are. M23 rebels. It's very important. They are rebel groups in DRC and allegedly funded by Rwanda. Okay. That's it. So this was a relatively shorter session because the questions were mostly factual in nature and mostly map related. In the coming days, we will be discussing more concepts, and one final wrap up of the whole concepts will be there. So I'll be explaining each concept in detail, so you can follow that for more. And that's about it. I hope this session was helpful for you. Stay tuned for more, and see you soon.